Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Myki Angeline, and this podcast is going to do a dual deal. Not only are we live on the Bad Filipino podcast, which is my personal, we also are doing some double duty. This will be an article for the Women's International Music Network, live front and center, because we are going to be talking about the Disney movie Encanto, but we're going to focus on all of the women involved in the film, from the actors to composer, director, the characters, and also singing, and the culture of the film and how it impacts women in the generations, which is why I'm about to introduce to you my very good friend who is of Colombian descent and is going to provide her background in with her own history and traditions. I welcome my good friend Jennifer.
Hello.
Oh,
Hi, my friend.
so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I feel like this took forever, but it was right on
It
time.
was right on time. It's perfectly timed. I love it.
Yes. And so this is why we're going to focus everything female, because female women we do not get focused on enough as it is. And
We're
this animated feature really empowers us. So before we get into that, why don't we you share with everybody a little bit of background about you, what you do, and your history and being Colombian.
awesome. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. So, my name is Jennifer, and I am a writer, blogger, content creator, creative. And I am one half of the blogging duo Curly Curvy Passion on Instagram and the web. And I am Colombian American, so first generation born in the US. My parents are both from Colombia. I'm actually the daughter of an Afro Colombian and a Caucasian Colombian woman. So I have background living in the East Coast. I was born in New York, raised in New York and New Jersey, lived in California, and now living in South Florida. So my experience has been definitely a combined experience in this country, growing up with both traditions. And I come from a very strict family. So we were taught at a very young age that we are to always honor our Colombian culture in every way. And that's how I grew up. So to see this film is really life changing for me. So I'm super
You
glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, and let's start with that as what it was about this particular, because for me it was Moana, because even though
Mhm.
I'm Filipino, I was raised Hawaiian culture.
Mhm.
So the way Moana captured me, I can honestly tell it captured you. This film captured you. So why don't we start off with talking about how Disney got it right culturally when it came to this film?
Honestly, I think they got it right in so many ways. And I'm a tough critic. So anyone will tell you in my life, my friends, my family, my partner, will tell you that I'm a pretty tough critic, particularly when it comes to cultural nuance. I'm really particular about that because I'm a big advocate for not treating all cultures as all similar cultures as a monolith. I think it's really important to talk about nuance. And so I'm a really tough critic when it comes to Latino cultures, and really proper representation. So I went into the film hesitant, wondering, oh gosh, is it just a pretty package that is going to get the details right? But there are a number of ways they got it right from the extensive research I can tell they did. I read about the research after watching the film, not prior. The scenery, the verbiage, the clothing, the music, the instruments used in the music. Um, and a lot of the references that they make to the actual culture of how we grow up. Again, we're not a monolith even within one country, right? So there are differences within each region. Just like if you're from California, you might have some things that were customs in your family that aren't customary in Kentucky, and vice versa, right? But that is what they got right, in my opinion, is the cultural representation of the dynamics of Colombian culture that it can also be applied to other cultures as well. And visually stunning, and so representative of some of the magical and beautiful places that exist in Colombia.
I love that because I rewatched it today, and little backstory. The reason I invited Jennifer onto my podcast to discuss this because I caught you on an Instagram live,
Hmm.
and you were who was it you were talking with again?
With Daily Sofrito by George Torres. So it's
Right,
a,
right.
yeah.
Daily Sofrito, and you were talking about this film, and it reminded me how important it was for me to want to find someone who had the background like you do to
Hmm.
talk about the impact of this film, because Disney has come a long way, and we had discussed this off camera before we went live. The importance of they went away from the whole direct villain, direct hero, somebody gets saved, and I didn't research that part. I don't know if the first movie was Brave or if it was because not even Mulan had an evil person, but
Hmm.
to where you're just dealing with it's the inner demons that we all possess.
Right.
And when we
Sometimes
look in a
we are the
mirror,
bad guy. Sometimes we are the villain. There
yes.
doesn't need to be an obvious villain. And I think that movies like this address the villains within us, the demons within us, the generational trauma within us, a lot of the things within us that we can work on to build a better foundation for future generations.
Oh, the
It just is
generational
mind
trauma.
blowing.
Us or women of color, we know this, don't we, in our cultures? Because it's so strong there in the Philippine culture. You don't even know, right? But you
Yeah.
do know.
Yeah,
you
and
know.
that's important to touch upon, even in the representation of the film of the different skin tones and everything, because I even come from a place of privilege, even being Colombian American. I mean, in Colombia, I'm considered blanca, I'm considered white. So I still have privilege in Colombia compared to my older sister who's darker skinned and is Afro Colombian. So yeah, there's a lot that we go through as just women with a cultural background, that is non-Caucasian.
Because that's one of the many details of this film was the diversity in their skin tone.
Yeah, and that
Right.
was really important because I think that a lot of people don't really understand that about Colombian culture, that we have Afro-Colombian roots, we have indigenous roots, we have a white race and we have a black race, and we're all so intertwined. And there is no one person that you can necessarily look at and be like, oh, they're Colombian or she's Colombian, or it's just we run the gamut. We really are represented by a lot of different looks.
And this film did really well in when it came to the casting. So before I even get to the casting, let's do a little rundown of Disney's Encanto. It is the 60th film produced by Disney, and we can't go without saying who wrote all the original music.
Yes,
Lin Manuel Miranda.
Miranda.
Did I
Yes,
say that correctly?
you did.
And you discuss how we know his style like through and through from all his past to his present and anything else he's writing. But the fact that it was co-directed by Charisse Castro Smith, woman who she also co-wrote the screenplay. She's from Miami, Florida. She's from Cuban descent. Jermaine Franco. Okay, here we go. First female composer for a Disney animated feature, for DreamWorks Animation, and for Pixar. She's the first Latina composer invited to join the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences branch and to receive the Annie Award for Outstanding Achievement in Music for an animated feature for Coco. I mean, I was like, oh, that's like the most
Unreal,
amazing thing. And then when you
right?
go down the list of the actors that played the female parts, they're all Colombian, Cuban descent. So I really am not trying to mess up these names. These names are so long. So the actress who voiced Abuela, Maria Cecilia Botero Cadiva, Cadavid, Cadavid.
I think you got
I
that
think I
right.
said that right. Now she voices the character, but they had a different actress singing who is from Cuba, and that's Olga Merediz. And let's see, Angelica Maria Cepeda Jimenez was Julieta, the
Mm-hmm.
mom,
Mm-hmm.
also born in Colombia. Carolina.
Yes.
Okay, you had
Carolina.
Carolina del Pilar Gitan
Right on.
Lozano
Mm-hmm.
was Pepe Madrigal, Maribel's aunt, and she's from Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Diane Guerrero is Isabella, the oldest one, who's the perfect one.
Yes.
Stephanie Beatrice, which because she okay, okay, so the fact that I just been watching her because I just discovered Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never watched this thing.
I
My
haven't. I've
daughter and
heard, but
oh my
yeah.
gosh, my daughter and I sit there and we're watching all these episodes are hilarious, and she's in it,
Oh,
and
this was this movie was my first
she's
exposure to
a
her. I had no
tough
idea who she
ass.
was. She's
Oh my
amazing.
gosh, she is a tough ass, and so I'm like, she's voicing a 15-year-old in Encanto. She has got
Amazing
range.
talent. Yeah.
Holy cow! And all of these women that I'm mentioning, they're acting, they're doing the voiceover, and they're singing. Jessica Darrow, Cuban
Ah,
American, born in
mhm.
Miami. She is Luisa,
Yes.
surface
Badass.
pressure. And
Badass.
and even with that character, they fought with Disney to give her muscles and to make her look
Hmm.
less quote unquote feminine.
Yeah.
And that character spoke to me.
Right. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Not even just, I mean, not only just the physical attribute, because I love having muscles,
Yeah, man.
but her song, Surface Pressure, the
Oh, it's a
words in
bop.
it, the words in
Yeah.
it, the fact that she has to be strong to have purpose, because
Mhm.
without being the strength of the family, what is her purpose? Girl, you know I cried the first time I saw that.
Oh, I don't you don't even know how many songs I've cried at. I know which song I cried at the most, which is the one that people are not going to expect I did. But Surface Pressure for me, I've cried listening to it in the car on my way home from work. Because when you
Oh,
really listen to it, I'm like, holy crap. It's just
yeah. Lyrically,
crazy.
these songs are so strong.
Yeah, I really do have to tell people if you feel like you're like in an Encanto whirlwind and you've just heard it back forwards and forwards with your kids or grandkids on the movie, I really encourage people to listen to the soundtrack in some headphones or in the car.
Yes.
It will be a
Yes.
whole different experience when you really listen lyrically to how genius these songs were written. There's so much nuance to every character that's weaved into the lyrics of the song. It's mind blowing.
Well, Waiting on a Miracle made me cry too, and that's the
Yeah.
one,
Mirabel, Mirabel,
Mirabel.
Mirabel,
Look at me
like as
getting
in
this
look.
wrong. Okay,
Mirabel.
so a little breakdown now with the music of it. The soundtrack was released November 19th last year, and it reached number one after only being 2 weeks on the charts. And that hasn't happened since Frozen 2, right?
Hmm.
The track We Don't Talk About Bruno. That's the one you had sent me. That video has been recorded in 21 different languages.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It broke
20
various records. It became Disney's most successful song in the UK. It was the first ever original Disney song to reach number one
Wow.
in the UK. It peaked at number two here on the Billboard 100, which is the highest charting Disney song in US history. And we're talking the original songs written, right?
Right.
Um, Gosh, here we go.
And
Hold
it
on,
has
hold on.
a cha-cha-cha like son montuno rhythm, which on top of that, like you've got this song that's doing so well around the world that is a Latin rhythm. Son montuno comes from Cuba and cha-cha-cha also is kind of like weaved into that rhythm. So,
We'll
the
break it
fact that
down, girl.
people, yeah.
You tell us. You tell us. So, and then now get this though. There are 7 songs that have charted from this
Mm,
from this album. 7 songs, right?
wow.
What I think is crazy about this album, it dethroned Adele's 30. And Adele's 30 was the
No.
number one album of 2021. Even though it only released the last 6 weeks,
Oh,
Adele's album broke records and
yeah.
sold bajillions. And to know that
Wow.
this is the album that dethroned her blows my
Yeah. That is
mind,
incredible.
right?
Incredible.
So it earned, oh my gosh, 88 million streams, 11,000 album sales. This album,
Wow.
right? We Don't Talk About Bruno, the most popular song. It charted, reached number one on Spotify's top 50. Let's say Surface Pressure reached number 10. First
Mhm.
Disney animated film to have a generated multiple top 10 song in the Hot 100. What Else Can I Do? Number 31. The Family Madrigal 43. Dos Aru Oh shoot.
Oruguitas.
Thank you. Dos
Oru-
Oruguitas. If you say
Oruguitas.
it, I
You
can
got it
repeat it.
perfect. Oruguitas.
Dos Oruguitas. Number 44, Waiting on a Miracle. Number 65, All of You. The one everyone's saying at the end.
Mhm.
94. Like
Wow.
what?
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And a madrigal or madrigal it's a term that's from back in the day where several voices come together to sing one score. A lot of people don't know that. So it's not coincidence that that's the name of the family, because I really picked up on that, where it's like you really needed all the voices, especially in We Don't Talk About Bruno. Everybody has a little part where they're overlaying
They do.
the next person's part, and there's so many little references back to the message of the movie, including, in my opinion, why the family name is Madrigal.
I'm pretty certain. I haven't researched it, but I would willing to bet that this is going to be a live production when everything comes back.
Oh, I think it
And
would be amazing.
this will blow the roof off and it will break records.
Yeah, and you can really spin off of every character. Like, I
Yes.
want to know what Isabella's going to do next, now that she doesn't have to be perfect. I want
Right?
to know what, you know what I mean? Like, I think that every character has an ability to be developed into their own sort of spin-off. I mean, I really think that there's enough material here, honestly.
Well, and we can even, you know what, we can even so let's break it down with the characters. Let's go through that, because to me this is so important. Also, oh, I forgot to mention, Colombian singer-songwriter Sebastian Yatra
Yes.
performed Dos Orugi-
Oruguitas.
Oruguitas. Come
Yeah.
on, you got this, girl. And it was named by the critics as the album's best song. And
Mhm.
because they do it, I love that it's in Spanish in the beginning of the movie,
It
and then
is completely in Spanish
completely, and
in
then
the movie.
in the credits it's in English.
Yep, yep. That is
And
the song that got me. That's the
oh,
song that, while I was sitting there with my dad on the right and my mom on the left,
Yes.
and my sisters to both sides of me.
Please
Those
touch on
would
that
be
if you wish to.
yeah, it
Watch,
just
watching it with your family.
watching it with my family. I'm such a crier, so I promise myself I'm not going to cry on your podcast. I don't remember the last time that my entire family watched a film. I just don't. I used to go to the movies a lot with my dad because we were just movie nerds when I was younger. But I really don't remember the last time the five of us. First of all, we didn't live together for 25 years, so or live near each
Mhm.
other. But I never have watched a film about Colombia that isn't about the status quo Colombian story that we're so sick of hearing about. That's all the negative. I just I just never had that. So to really see the opening of the film and the colors and the music, my dad was tapping his toes and my mom was just like smiling the whole time. And oh, I mean, there were so many times where I was like, don't look, don't look, don't look. I can't. Because at one point I really thought I was going to lose it just to see like, and I could hear my mom every time there was a reference to something that was accurate. My mom was like, oh, look, the cups. So, oh, look, the tiles. Or my dad would say, oh, they're drinking this kind of juice. I mean, it was like, there's so many things that were familiar. And it was just magical, really, really a special experience to have seen it with my family.
And the importance of cultural from a cultural standpoint, especially communities of color, because in the music industry, for me, for working with the Women's International Music Network, countless stories, and it still happens to this day, where women are always having to work twice, three times as hard to be recognized in any aspect of the industry, right?
Yeah.
Because it's still predominantly dominated by men.
Hmm.
And then it gets even worse when it becomes women of color, when it becomes, Asian women, Hispanic, Latina, Indian, black. It's like, and then it becomes worse and worse to try to prove you are talented and you're in this position or working on this film or working on this album. You're mixing sound for a
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
And so, but I love like having you here and listening to you share just how it impacted your family to feel seen,
And
to
to feel
see
seen in a
yourself
way that's
on a
more
screen and feel
representative.
seen.
Yeah, and I like to break out of the box of the stereotype,
Yeah.
the stereotype Latina, which is such a complex word in and of itself, but the stereotypical, let's say, Colombian woman that's not X or Y. I don't even want to say the two things that we're normally portrayed as because I don't want to even give them airtime. But it's just I think it's like any culture. Is a Southeast Asian woman always represented as such and such in a movie? Is a Colombian woman or Filipino woman always represented as a such and such? There are these stereotypes that we need to break. So to see that in an animated film, I think is even more important because there's a message for the younger kids and the older kids. Like you're not always seeing the Colombiana or the Latina portrayed as fill in the blank.
Yes. And then and breaking down the characters again. Sorry, I don't know why I'm like, okay. I'm just like I'm so full of it. Okay, so we'll just go character by character. So we talked about Luisa and
Hmm.
her freaking out about the strength thing and feeling like if she that's her identity. And everyone fought with that. I mean,
Yeah, everyone did.
shoot. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me get this right. Which one was I wrote them all down. Oh, yes, Isabella, the
Hmm.
the flower girl.
The perfect one.
Well, see, that's the thing. We're told in the very beginning, we're given the perception of from
Mhm.
Mirabella's. Am I saying it right?
Mirabel.
Mirabel, from her perspective, because that very first song, The Family Madrigal, she's the one breaking down, this is how my family, but you realize as you go along, that's from her perspective,
Hmm.
because since she was without a gift for the whole of the movie until the very end,
Hmm.
she's obviously paying extra attention to figure out how she can be of service because she feels the lowest of the totem pole. And so she sees Isabella as the perfect one. And then you don't realize until her song, she doesn't want to be.
Exactly.
Just like Luisa,
Mhm.
she feels this need and this role,
It's a
you know,
responsibility that's
a
assigned to
responsibility.
you by your family
Yes.
and your community. And it's almost like it's a slap in the face to your family and your community and your culture to not accept that responsibility, even if you're good at it.
And is that something
Right.
you've experienced within your family and your upbringing?
I have. I mean, I have amazing parents and an amazing family, and I love my culture. So this isn't to diss on that, but there's an incredible amount of pressure to show up in your family and to contribute what you're good at. And what you're good at may not always be what you like. So for me, I ended up, I am a writer. I do write and I love to write and I'm good at it. But when I
Yes, you are.
decided, thank you, humbly speaking, I mean, I can always improve, but I know that I do it well. It's not like math. I stink at math. Like, don't make me do math. I don't like it. Right. But writing did not become a career for me. And there were several people in my family who were like, well, why wouldn't you become a journalist? Why wouldn't you do that if you're good at it, if it comes naturally to you? Or, other things that I think other people can relate to, that if you're good at it and it comes naturally to you, and it might cost you less money to do something that you're good at, or it might be easier in life to follow the path of something you're good at, then you should do that, because that's the gift that you've been given. And how dare you not be grateful for that gift? So yeah, I have felt that pressure before in
And
many
then
ways.
so my friend Elisa, she's in the chat room. She put up a post. Thank you, Elisa, for saying she loves the movie herself. Loved No One Was Carlos. Loved seeing the food. Loved the music from the soundtrack being both in English and Spanish, which we
Yes.
did touch on.
Hmm.
That was so important for the film, and I feel that too, even though, like I said, Filipino raised Hawaiian culture, but there were expectations on me and that's my father's side. On my mom's side, it's Caucasian, right?
Yeah.
Irish, English. But on my dad's side, completely Filipino, raised Hawaiian culture. And because his my grandparents are from the Philippines, but they escaped to Hawaii
Mm.
to give their kids a better life, like have the kids and wanted to be somewhere other than the Philippines. And so
Right.
I know that feeling. It's like that's why the Waiting on a Miracle got to me,
Yeah.
because I felt like I was so ostracized and different for not knowing I wasn't my true self yet. So I was
Hmm.
fighting so hard to belong. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up thinking I needed to be a veterinarian because it was like, you be a lawyer, you be a doctor. Well, I don't wanna be a doctor, but I love animals, which also
Hmm.
Antonio, his gift,
Right.
please. Could I please have that gift?
Right. For
Because
real.
at his age and getting older, I told my Filipino grandfather on his deathbed I would be a veterinarian, and you better believe I held on to that for so long.
Because you made a promise.
I felt like, yes, and I felt like it would let him down, and that's the importance with this film is what that breaks down. The fact that you and I know, the audience knows, when we see Abuela's beginning, the fact that she falls in love with somebody and almost immediately following the journey of the romance of their relationship, he is taken from her in the most violent way, which Disney covers it as best as they can,
Oh, then they did a great job.
with 3 children, and her partner is gone forever.
Hmm.
Try to, as a mom, anyone else who's a mom, or if you've cared for, your siblings or your, and whatever, you just, that pull, and you realize she was either gonna fight or flight, and she fought.
Yeah.
And she immediately took the role and was like, done. I have to be solid. And
Right.
because of her feeling, putting that pressure on herself, unknowingly passed it down. So everyone else, and they treated the gift more importantly than they did being a family and being themselves. It was like the number one thing for us to do, for all of the villagers and for everybody. We have to keep this going, because if we lose this, we lose everything. That was,
We lose who we are.
yes,
They built, their foundation was rocky, which is why the casita was cracking and falling
yes,
apart,
yes.
because they built that upon trauma. So yes, she assumed that role as quickly as she could because she had to fight or flight, like you said, but she never dealt with her trauma. She never dealt with how incredibly traumatic it was to be displaced at that time in Colombian history, which is very accurate. Many of
Go ahead, touch
our
on that
grandparents,
scene. Don't you
yes,
have something to say about that scene?
I do. It's that was the scene that took me out. I was in tears. I mean, that, because the song is very emotional to people who watch it, but then when you understand the lyrics, it is heart-wrenching, because it's so well written about how, it's just two caterpillars, which is what dos oruguitas means, two caterpillars
Yes.
who then become butterflies, and they want to find this future for themselves and build this future, which the butterfly has another significance, which we can touch upon later.
Yes.
um, and to really get started in thinking I'm going to create a family and a life of my own, and then shortly, like you said, that's taken away from you. It's very accurate to what a lot of our ancestors went through. I mean, it's the turn of the century, so it's not very long ago, but many of our grandparents, not necessarily mine, my family is not from that particular region that's referenced in the movie, but we have tons and tons of families that have that reference of their families being displaced around the time of violence in Colombia, which plagued us for so many years. And so I believe that she started this family and embraced this magical gift that she was given without first dealing with her own trauma. And so you never heal that, you never talk about it. And it's like this constant theme of not talking about things, right?
Yes, holding it in and just doing your thing.
Yep.
And so go back to the butterfly thing. What was the significance of them using butterfly in this?
So
Or do you know?
I
Are you
do know.
guessing? Okay, okay.
Now, in this case, I know, or I have my best guess, but I have read some items that confirmed my guess. And I picked this up right away just because I happen to know the Nobel Prize winner for literature, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who wrote 100 Years of Solitude, which is a very well-known book by many of us who had to read it in school. There is a lot of magical realism, which is a style of literature that he uses in his writing. And there's a lot of reference to the color yellow and yellow butterflies. So a symbol of renewal and hope. And so it's not coincidence that those yellow butterflies are in the movie. I don't know all the background or all the conversations that took place, but I immediately recognized the yellow butterflies and look who they were always surrounding. Mirabel, she has the yellow butterflies on her dress.
Yep.
Right? They're always surrounding her.
They're so significant. I'm like, and it's the single one, and then it's on her dress, and it's yellow. I'm like, there's got to be. She sees it in when she convinces Bruno to complete his vision.
Yeah, and you know the abuela has butterflies on her skirt too, but they're black.
Oh my gosh, I need to go back and watch for a third
So
time.
her light's been dimmed a little bit. It's just
whoa.
Details. I know. I'm telling you, it's and I that's where my nerd kicks in, because I literally every time I've watched it, I've been like, okay,
you find something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And the thing is well, and the fact that they use butterflies too, because I'm not sure how many people know that when they do, when they change, they turn to liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like they're reborn.
What's that called? The chrysalis? Is it chrysalis? Chrysalis? Something like that?
Yeah, it's the chrysalis.
Yeah.
It's like the breaking down, becoming liquid, and becoming a butterfly. To me, right. To me, I think for anybody, I mean, I think this speaks to anyone who's coming into their true self. And we're referring to, you know, from embracing your culture to embracing how you identify.
Yeah.
Embracing
and to leaving behind what you know and starting over, which is my story.
Yes. I mean, the first time I learned about that, my mind was blown. I was like, how do you know, it's like when we conceive as humans, when we come from that tiny little, and then it just grows. It's almost like it took it kind of went back to the beginning to start over again.
Yep, exactly. And they start over again, but they start over on a rocky foundation.
Oh, look who's in the chat. Hold on. Let's pull this up. You know who? Look who it is.
Hey, what's up? It's Sarko.
So, not dealing with trauma, that's also a coping skill of folks who are oppressed, because the assumption is that if you feel the sadness, you will fall apart and not be able to put yourself back together.
There you go. And she knows
yes, we should have a viewing party. I agree.
Oh, I love that idea. That's a great idea.
Coming from an actual therapist. So there you go.
There you go. She knows what she's talking about.
A certified therapist.
Certified.
Yes. I think I cried when Bruno, when you see that he had his table.
Oh.
Right.
The place setting.
His place setting. That, you know, the fact that Abuela just telling people we don't talk about him because he abandoned us.
Yeah.
And
why? Because he told the truth.
His love for his family was still so strong.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed near because he didn't want to hurt his family, so he disappeared because he thought he was hurting his family.
Yeah.
And he stayed. And that scene right there, that's like, to me, that's symbolic of the black sheep of the family.
It is. And I think it's also symbolic of a conversation that we can have another day, obviously, because we're focusing on women, but it's really important to...
We can slide a little bit. Go ahead.
I think it's really important to talk about what that says about the men in several of our cultures. And and the fact that the mental health aspect is so often ignored because they have to be macho and fuerte and strong. Yeah, the women, that's expected of the women too, but it is extremely expected of our men. And so, you know, there are many men in their own right, or people who identify as men, I think, who will slip away into the shadows for the sake of, not hurting their family or not ruining their family. And I think there's an incredible amount of pressure still on our men, including in Colombian culture, to just, we don't, I'm okay. I'd rather just go away, or I won't show up, or I won't go to the family gatherings because I'm going to cause a rift. Like
I
that's
agree.
important to notice too.
I agree with that for sure. We so then oh, God, poor Bruno. And that being the most popular song tone, we don't
Oh,
talk about Bruno.
I know.
I'm like, "Oh, but let's talk about Bruno."
Let's do it.
So, and then going back to the women,
Yeah.
I think probably what I noticed also watching us the second time around was how when you're so focused on who you think you're supposed to be or how you see somebody, you do not give yourself a chance to open up and really listen and hear.
Yeah.
And we realized that at the end of it, when both Abuela and Maribel both see each other for the
Yeah.
first time,
Yeah.
even though Maribel has heard this story since she was born. But when you hear a story over and over again, you know this in the family, when the family, because we, so in with women of color cultures that I know of, like Filipino, Hawaiian, I'm going to guess Columbian, you tell me if I'm wrong, we share our stories
Yeah.
because when you look at the way history was done, they try to wipe us out, right?
Hmm.
Let's be
Hmm.
real about that. I mean, I share this with you about here because I'm here in Sacramento, California, and about the history of the Japanese they tried to all but erase like the Japanese culture that was so vibrant here in Sacramento. On the West Coast, we had the highest count of Japanese population and Japanese owned businesses. Lisa Ling, it drops today. I'm going to probably either watch it tonight or tomorrow. She's got a
Oh,
special on HBO
I have to
about
watch it. I love
Asian.
her.
Yes, about Asian cuisine, and she talks about the
Mm.
culture and the heritage behind it with the cuisine. I did not know that her grandparents are the ones who opened Hop Sing in Old Folsom,
Oh, I
which
didn't know that
I
either.
loved eating there.
Wow. That's awesome.
The fact that dishes like fried rice and chop suey are not Asian dishes, they're American dishes. Passed
Hmm.
off as Asian dishes. If you go to Asia, China, you will not find that food. And the fact that of all of the restaurants in the US, Asian restaurants are the number one. They outnumber all fast food combined. So here we are, a lot of our society hating on the Asian culture, especially in the height of the pandemic and blaming Asian culture for COVID, but we have no problem profiting off of or enjoying the cuisine.
Exactly.
So when we go back to that, it's like we find this need to keep us alive. And by
Hmm.
keeping us alive, it's sharing our stories.
Yeah.
The Hawaiian culture, that's what the dances are all about. The
For us too.
ancient
Yeah. Dancing
hula.
is very significant in Colombia too.
Yes, the ancient hula, the chants are about stories of your past and your family and your generation. And that's how you kept it alive.
Hmm.
So, for Maribel, she's probably like, yeah, yeah, I've been hearing this since I was like in the womb. And so she doesn't really absorb what Abuela has gone through because she's so busy working on trying to be important to the family,
Yep. Yep. And
right?
even the way she hears the story, if you really watch the next time you watch it, pay attention to how the story is told at the beginning of the movie
Compared to the end.
compared to the end.
Yep. Oh,
During
no, I
during
caught
those
that. Trust. I
during
caught
those
that.
Gitas, it's not sugar coated, right? So
No, at
it's
all.
not it's the real. I've never seen like a more real animated creature or animated character
Person.
cry like that when Abuela was young and threw herself on the floor and just the
With her
reality.
babies, with her
Oh,
babies. The last time I cried that hard was when Mufasa died, and that's a
yeah,
lion.
yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
I
Um,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
and even there's a difference. There's the magical, fantastical way that we hear stories when we're too young to hear the real story, right? And
yeah,
I'm experiencing that now with my senior age parents. There are some
really.
stories that, yeah, my sisters and I are getting a chance to spend time with them since they're here in the States. And we're hearing stories where we're like, I don't remember you telling that story that way. And then they'll be like, yeah, but you were 8 when you heard the story. So now you're not 8 and you can hear the story in its entirety with all of the ugly parts that we cut out. So yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Like,
Mhm.
so the story will be like pampered down, but
Mhm.
responsibility to your family isn't because remember, Antonio, when he's going to receive his gift and get his door, he's
Mhm.
already asked, will you promise to do this? Will you
Oh,
promise to uphold for the family? Will you promise to take care of? The
So
boy
much
hasn't even
tougher.
reached puberty yet, but
I
that's
know.
in a lot of our cultures, it's
It
that
is.
way.
Yeah, it is.
You
And
know?
and again, that's a that I think that's also nuanced to boys in our culture. And might I add, I have to take a quick side note to how incredible it is that he's an Afro-Colombian character too. That's
Yes.
super important for
Oh,
us to
yeah,
kind
we've
of
seen it
never
on the TikToks and the Insta, how there
hmm
was a young boy who felt seen standing next to that to Antonio. There's a young
Yeah.
girl who sees Maribel. She
Yeah, it's
feels
crazy.
seen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Representation is so key. I
Yeah.
mean, when I hear about, and this is where I've lived in both cultures, right?
Yeah.
Being raised on the Caucasian side, being raised on the Filipino side, I've seen both sides. When I hear about, and I've heard this for the last 20 years, let kids be kids. Why are you giving them so many responsibilities? Getting them ready for the world. At 9 years old, I was changing diapers, and they were the cloth diapers with the big ass pins.
hmm
9 years old. I'm
Yeah.
probably the same age as Antonio, trusted to not poke a baby in its freaking hip,
Yeah.
knowing when, rinsing out diapers, because that's life.
It is.
You can
I mean, my
still
sister.
be a kid.
I'm 8 years older than my sister, who I blog with, and she'll probably chuckle when she sees this on the replay. But I was changing her diapers, and I'm
See?
not. Let me be clear. I did not raise my sister. My mother did her job and raised my sister.
Correct. So
However,
you're learning
we were
responsibilities.
absolutely at 8 years old. My sister was born. I was changing diapers. I was helping my mom out with dinner if she was busy with my sister. I was ironing my dad's work shirts with starch because his
Okay.
shirts had to be stiff and starched. So yeah, that responsibility was definitely part of my life at a young age. And our abuela, which we call in the region of Colombia I'm from, my mamita, which is what I refer to as my abuela. My mamita wouldn't have it any other way. She'd be like, if your dad steps in the door from work, you better run and get him his slippers. Run
Mm.
and be there and get him his slippers because he's coming home from a long day. And
Hmm.
so yes, those things are expected of us at a young age because that's real life. Like they always say, oh, you're going to grow up someday and you're going to get married and have kids or whatever. And you're going to have to learn how to cook and clean and iron and blah, blah, blah. So it's just
So
part
here
of
we
our
go,
culture.
real quick. Okay, I got to throw these up because we got this. So here from Love Bruno
Love Bruno.
to
He's
Oh
the
my God,
freaking truth teller.
to Oh my God, preach, because we were talking about Japan and Asia,
hmm
and and then look who else is here.
Ah, it's my sister.
Yeah, she's driving, but she's here. Hello, sister.
Oh, hi, sister.
Hi,
I love
sister.
her. She's the one
So,
who's had to put up with the person you see here. She's my housemate and amazing. We and let me tell you, this is why I think this film is so incredible. Andrea and I are very close, and we get confused a lot for being really similar, but we actually are quite different in our personalities. And Andrea got a lot out of the movie that I did, but she also has her own interpretation of the movie. She's 8 years younger.
okay.
She's never lived in Colombia. I have. She didn't go to school there. I did for just about a year. So she picks up on a lot of things that I might not. And I also am kind of like more of a nerd and had to learn about Colombian culture growing up, where she didn't because she didn't grow up in the same area that I did. So there's something in this film for everyone, even within one family.
I love that you watched it generational from your parents to you and your
We
younger
did
sister.
3 generations. My younger sister, 8 years
That's amazing.
younger, and my older sister, 4 years older.
That is
So
amazing.
there was 4 years older, 8 years younger, me, the middle kid, mom who's 76, and dad who's 80.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So then, okay, um, God, I want to kind of take it back and forth because I feel like there's things we haven't touched. Is there anything we haven't touched on yet that because we've been on a roll?
I
We've been on
know.
a roll. Was
I
there
think
anything I haven't we said we're gonna bring this up or we're gonna bring that up?
I think we have brought up that one of the most important things that I want to drive home is that this movie is genius because it appeals to kids from the visual aspect and from sort of the fun animated character aspect, but it really has some deep resonating messages for the adults if you really want to listen. There's so many conversational pieces that can spin off of this movie.
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up is why we need to be the ones to watch movies like this and support movies like this. It is up to us, whatever fill in the blank us means to you. I'm not going to say Latinos because if Latinos not a country, right? They're the specifics. I am Colombian
Correct.
American, okay?
Yes.
So it's important for me as a Colombian American to support this film, for people who are like me to support this film, to talk about it. And if tomorrow they come out with a film about Chile or Uruguay or Poland or some other country, I'm going to watch it with the same enthusiasm because that's what we need. We need to show Hollywood and the masses that we want to be represented with nuance. with
Yes.
nuance, because it's really easy to say, okay, we're going to represent Southeast Asians this way or Latinos this way. There's nuance, and that's important. And this film got it right in terms of nuance. There are details that I could go on forever that we'll talk about in my blog that are specific to Colombia, the instruments used in the music, the plates on the table, the meals, the type of juice on the table. Those are very specific and regional to Colombia. So I think that we need to touch upon those things and continue to spread the word anytime we see something that people get right, that's accurate. Because that's the only way that we're going to speak to directors and producers and writers how important it is to tell our stories with nuance.
Hello, Christina. She's in the chat room. Yes, diversity is well represented in it.
Yeah.
Black, Indigenous, people of color. Yes,
Yeah.
completely. I think and sister, we need to tell our stories authentically. Yes, you know what? And it's about
Oh,
time. It's
that
taken so
comment.
long. I
That
mean, in the
comment.
beginning of this podcast, I said this is the 60th film by Disney. How many films before there was a black princess?
Mm-hmm.
How many films before it was a woman of color? How many films before they stopped being princesses?
Right.
How
How
many
many
films
films
till it
before
got
the people of color weren't the people serving and the maids and the
thank
butlers?
you. How many films before it became to Moana and the girls were thick and it was beautiful?
Exactly. And by the way, I might want to be a princess who doesn't get saved by a prince.
Thank you.
Maybe I save myself.
Right? I loved how that everyone was built differently in this one too. Not
Yeah,
just the
but they
skin
all
tone,
needed
but they
each
were built
other.
different.
Yeah, they're built different. They look different, but there's this magic that happens when they all come together. And I think that is the other part of this film that we need to talk about, is that,
Yes.
sometimes without the other person, maybe we need the black sheep who we don't talk about because they tell the truth or they talk about the uncomfortable topics. Maybe I'm the first, fat person in my family, and I'm reclaiming the word fat. And I'm doing it in a culture of Colombian American women where there is extreme intense pressure to be thin and curvaceous, to be thin but curvaceous, and fit this mold of what the Colombian woman looks like. And so maybe I'm the one who changes that in my family. Maybe you need to get comfortable with my bigness,
Hence
right?
curly curve passion on
There you go.
IG.
Maybe I'm the first one in my family who's not straightening my curls because that is a Eurocentric symbol of beauty, is to have straight
Yes.
hair, and I don't want to do that. So again, that's where I think it's important, like my sister says, to tell our own stories authentically and not fill in that stereotype, because I don't want to be a stereotype. I want to be Jennifer. And if that doesn't fit another stereotype, then I'll create my own.
So, okay, as we're jumping back and forth, you can bring up other things. Touching more on the music again.
Yes, let's do it.
We're
Bring me back.
because the songs were both in English and in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm watching it, I have the subtitles, and they threw up the subtitles for the Spanish songs. But
Mm-hmm.
we don't really know how accurate that is, right? How it
Yeah.
translates.
Yeah. I would say the more catchy tunes, like we don't talk about Bruno, it doesn't have any Spanish in it, right?
Right.
So I will tell you from jump that Dos Oruguitas does not hit the same in English at all. They did their best.
Okay.
But there's an ache when you sing in Spanish, and also Spanish is a very
It's a very
complex,
passionate
robust.
language to sing.
It's a very passionate language, and we have about 5 different ways to say everything. So you have options.
Thank you. You have
Yeah.
3 ways that you say love. Let's touch on that one. I
Yeah.
learned this. I'm going to share this because I learned this from a passenger when I was driving for a Lyft in the city in San Francisco. Because that's an international airport, there's
Mhm.
all kinds of folks, right?
Yeah.
And I learned that in the Spanish language, however that translates with the other, there's 3 ways you say love. So you have the love you have like for family members.
Mhm.
You have the love like romance, like your
Mhm.
partner. You can
Mhm.
have love for like if you love food or you love your pet, which really helps because there's no way you can get it wrong when you tell someone how you love them, because that's what's so hard in the American slang. I don't even want to say English, the
Mhm.
American slang, because there's so many different ways we use love
Yeah.
that even if you text, like if you like somebody, you don't want to slip and say that word.
Right. Yeah.
You even if you only meant it like you love their hair,
Right.
you love the way that they prepare a meal.
It's so loaded if you say it in the wrong
It's
moment.
so loaded, but in Spanish, you can't get that wrong because there's
No.
3 different ways to say it, and that's it.
That's it.
So
Yeah, it's a very robust language.
I
Well,
love that.
the songs are amazing. I love the soundtrack, and I do think that they did their best. I don't really have any issues. I just think the songs that were chosen to be in Spanish, like Dos Oruguitas, needed to be in Spanish for sure.
Yes, I agree.
Hmm.
And I think because not everything has to be American. I mean, because Disney has gone through such a transition because when they did films like Mulan, no accents.
Yeah.
Everyone spoke like this.
No, and I don't want that. Again, nuance. I
It's
don't, that's
it's
not how my
not
family speaks.
authentic.
Right. And that's the thing is, one of our most famous Colombian singers sings one of the top songs in the movie, Columbian Encanto, which is a beautifully written song in his style of singing.
That's in my notes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Carlos Vives, and he did not write that song. But if you hear that song as a Colombian American or as someone who's a fan of his
Yes.
music, you would have thought he wrote it for the film, and it's the opposite.
Interesting.
But again, they kept
Okay.
it very specific. They used instruments that are very specific to Colombia, to that region of Colombia that you might not hear in other music. There's a particular drum and a particular flute that are native to Colombia from the indigenous population, and they weave those in. I mean, there just was a lot of thought put into the music, and also the music being representative of how important music is to us in Colombia. Music is very important in our culture, very important.
So my friend Christina Marie, she's I mean, she's everything film, production, art, you name it, she's done it, she does it, she advocates for it. And she's even saying they produce what we buy. Your dollar is your vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think it came more from not just trying to appeal to a whiter audience. Yes, I said that.
Yeah.
But the majority will purchase that because it's it's like a double-edged sword. They want to appeal just to them, but they also know that they're the ones. It's this weird
Cycle.
revolving circle
Yeah.
because they're the ones constantly buying because they're the ones constantly pitched to. But what happened when the Black Panther came out or
Yeah.
when Black Panther came out?
Yeah. We need to
Come
change
on.
the story, which needs to change the narrative, and people need to
Oh,
learn differently. You and
yes.
I talked off camera about how you read a comment on one of the reviews that said there wasn't much humor in Encanto.
Yes.
No, there wasn't much humor that you're familiar with, which is different.
Touch on that. You gave me
So
one.
I did. I gave you one, and this is something that only Colombian Americans will pick up on. There's a scene where Mirabel's dad, I believe it's when she puts together the puzzle and discovers which, by the way, all the puzzle pieces were emerald green, as in emeralds coming from Colombia.
Oh,
And
look at that. See, that's why I got you on
right?
this show.
And so when Mirabel figures things out, her dad is kind of like the equivalent of "oh crap" when you realize you've done something, and he says "miércoles." The word miércoles means Wednesday, but in Colombia specifically, we use that as "oh crap," oh shoot. Like if you drop something or if you forget something, we'll go miércoles. That is something so small in the film that's going to go over most people's head, but all Colombians will crack up at that part because we grew up hearing our older generations say that. So to the point of like changing the way that people receive a film, it's like think differently, think outside the box, don't expect the same. And we
Yes.
have to demand that. So
Yes.
for the people who say it didn't have enough this or it didn't have enough that, did it though? Is it really missing it? Or
It
did
didn't
you
have
not
enough
catch
of
it?
what you like.
That's right. Or what you
It didn't
recognize
have enough
because
of
we're
what
so
you're
used
used
to the
to. Yep.
yes. So we have
Yep.
to point out that nuance so that people can go, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't
Oh,
realize
yes.
that juice on the table wasn't orange juice. It's called lulo juice, and it's specific to Colombia, right?
That everybody, when you go back and watch Encanto, that juice is Lola juice
Lulo,
or Lulo.
and the arepa,
What?
which
So what is
mira is
Lulo?
lulo is a tree fruit native to Colombia and other regions. I think there's a couple other countries in South America who have it. It's an amazing combination. I guess the best way I can describe it is kind of like a cross between a passion fruit and a kiwi.
Oh,
It's
ooh,
so good.
that sounds good.
Yeah, and
So
then
your sister
mira,
says it's the older generation says it's their way of saying mierda.
yeah, exactly. So because that's so true, because we could, the older generations wouldn't curse, right? And so instead of saying, I don't know if we can curse on your show, so I'm trying to be
Oh,
careful.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So instead of saying, shit,
Yeah.
they would say shoot, right? So for us, instead of saying mierda, it would be like miércoles. Miércoles sounds the same, sounds similar, kind of like
That's
mirabel sounds like miracle, kind of like
okay.
madrigal sounds like. I mean, there's all these little things. But yeah, I think that that's important also for us to point out that other people might not recognize is if we keep telling these type of stories that change the type of humor or the type of of characters that we're used to seeing, then, it's going to open up the thought process of not only our younger generation, but our older ones too. And the time is now. The time is really now to do that. This is the time we're living in. We need to see those specifics that are more outside of the status quo stereotype that we're used to seeing.
This has been awesome. I'll take it a couple more minutes before we end this. If there's anyone that's been watching, thank you for popping in and sharing all your stuff. Elisa also shared. Her husband commented on the different and diverse looks, including the German influence.
Yeah. There's German and there's also Arab influence, which a lot of people might not notice. But in the scene where Mirabel is getting up from her bed and getting dressed, and she slips into those very specific type looking shoes, those are called alpargatas. And that's a nod to the Arab influence in Colombia, which a lot of people don't know exists.
Wow. I'm learning some. I'm so glad I'm going to have this recorded when I go to put this as an article on the women's site, because I'm going to go back over, and this is going to be quite the learning experience for me on this one.
And again, people need to recognize I'm not an expert. This is just my own lived experience and just a little bit that I know. Imagine how much more, but imagine how much more a Colombian born and raised and currently living in Colombia picks up on this. That's just me living here as the daughter of very strict parents who were very adamant about me learning about my culture. I mean, some of these things even my sister might not pick up on because I'm older than her, and she grew up a little bit differently. So imagine how much more someone who lives in Colombia and in that particular region of Salento, Valley of Cocora, which is kind of like the tall valley, the valley with the tall trees where the movie is set. Someone there could touch on even more than I ever could.
Authenticity. From what I gathered when I was doing my research on it, Disney actually, I think on their site had said this was their first time going this direction with a Disney animated film.
Yeah.
Here I go again. Staying so true to the culture.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for those involved that fought for that.
Me too. And I hope that this is a symbol to them that it works. That it can work.
Yeah. It opens doors. That when people feel seen, groups of people see themselves represented, it makes all the difference. And it opens the door for those to learn about. Like when you discussed it being a conversational piece, this movie is a great way to open up conversations with your children or your partner. Or a family member.
About generational trauma, pressures, talents, how to use your gifts, how to change directions, how to be a rebel, how to ask questions, what we don't talk about, the culture of silence. I mean, so many different things. Apart from the fact that I think now my friends will get a taste into what it's been like for me as a 40-something-year-old woman to never see myself represented this way on film.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And it took a Disney animated film.
Thank God it happened in my lifetime.
Yes, I'm so happy. I'm happy Moana happened in my lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Filipinos now.
Yeah, Vivo.
They got it right in Moana. They
Yeah.
did a little research on that, from the song to the representation to his tattoos to there were nuances in that as well that they kept true to.
Yep.
Right.
And we have to always speak on those because that's the only way that we're gonna demand more of that.
And I appreciate you speaking on this on my podcast for not only the Bad Filipino, but like I said, I am going to put this as an article for the Women's International Music Network. It has been an absolute honor. And I can't believe we kept this under an hour.
I know.
I'm so proud of both of us.
That we can chat. I'm very proud of us, but it's really been an honor. I love you to pieces. I'm so excited that we got to do this.
And thank you everyone in the chat room, of course, who and watching, and of course to MXL Microphones. They endorse me, and it's these products that brought this all to you. So I'm going to go ahead and end this and say thank you. Like again, this will be saved on my Facebook, on my YouTube. It'll have an article up. I can share it. Jennifer's going to share it. We encourage you if you want to go back and see the parts you missed. And on an ending note, like I end every show, every day that you wake up, you determine how your day will go. Thank you, Jennifer.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Love you,
everybody.
my friend.